High school cheerleader found dead in locker room in 2004. Security cameras showed no one entered or left, and her phone had one unsent text, "He's still in here." The air was thick that October morning in 2004. The campus of Willow Creek High stood quiet, its gymnasium locked and lights off, a ghost town in the making. By 6:32 a.m. the doors opened. A few early risers, mostly athletes and janitorial staff, trickled in. By 7:10 a.m., the first scream pierced the silence. Her name was Samantha Quinn, the school's star cheerleader, 17, senior year, Ivy League dreams. She was found sprawled on the cold tile floor of the girls' locker room, face pale, lips blue. One shoe off, a phone in her right hand. Her eyes were still open. The paramedics came fast, but they left slow, shaking their heads. Dead before anyone arrived. No signs of a struggle. No forced entry, nothing stolen. What baffled investigators more than the lifeless body was the security footage. Detective Mark Riley, who had taken point, watched the tape on loop. The locker room door opened once. At 6:13 a.m., Samantha walked in. Alone, she never came out, no one else ever entered. Even worse, her phone, now logged as evidence, had one unsent text in her drafts. "He's still in here." There was no he on the tape. No sounds, no signs, just silence. 20 years later, Detective Riley still had the case file on his desk. Officially labeled a death by unknown causes. Unofficially, it haunted him. The case had long since cooled, but that morning a new name arrived in Willow Creek PD's inbox. Jenna Riley, 26, newly assigned cold case investigator, and Mark Riley's daughter. Her dad hadn't told her much, only that this one would get under her skin. Jenna sat in a cramped back office with the single overhead bulb flickering. Cracked her knuckles, opened the file. Inside were the photos, Samantha's body, the phone, the empty locker room, time-stamped camera stills. Everything felt staged. She pulled up the digital archives, watching the footage again. The second camera inside the locker room had gone dark 3 minutes before Samantha entered. Coincidence? She leaned back. Something about it felt intentional. She emailed the tech team. Scrub locker room cameras frame by frame for glitches, drops, anything unusual. Match timelines, focus on 6 to 7 a.m. She barely hit send when the fire alarm erupted. She bolted outside, heart racing. Smoke billowed from the west wing. Within 5 minutes, 4 engines screamed into the lot. Students stood outside watching smoke rise, and one girl screamed, "There's a body in the locker room." Jenna was the first to run toward the gym, the same one Samantha had died in. Inside, smoke lingered like ghosts. Visibility was low. EMTs yelled for clearance. A teacher tried to block her, but Jenna flashed her badge and slipped through. In the far corner of the locker room, beneath scorched ceiling tiles and dripping water, lay another girl, younger, maybe 16. Blonde, cheerleader uniform, dead, eyes wide open. In her hand, a phone, the screen still glowing. An unsent message sat in the draft, "He's still in here." Chaos erupted. By noon, the press had swarmed. Local networks, online tabloids, and conspiracy theorists jumped in full force. But Jenna didn't care about the noise. She cared about the pattern. She called her father. "Dad," she said, "we've got another one." Silence. He finally spoke. "Same room? Same message." He paused. "Jenna, I need to tell you something." She froze. "What?" "There's something I didn't put in the file." He told her about the missing 2 minutes of footage from 2004. How one tech guy flagged the timestamp jump, how he was fired a week later for leaking case material, and how Riley himself had been threatened, anonymously. It wasn't just a bad case, he said. Someone made it disappear. Jenna's eyes narrowed. Someone inside the school? Maybe higher. She went back to the scene alone that night. She slipped through the back, flashlight in hand, scanning every crevice of the locker room. A breeze slipped through, despite there being no windows. She followed it, found a loose vent near the ground, partially hidden by a broken bench. It had been forced open. Inside, she found something, a bullet casing. Fresh, still warm. Her breath caught in her throat. She called in backup. Minutes later, Officer Bryce, her partner, stepped in beside her. She handed him the casing. Someone was here, recently. With a weapon, he squatted near the vent. This could be how he gets in and out. She looked back at the lockers. Then he never left. The next morning, the school went into lockdown. Officers were stationed at every hallway. The gym and locker rooms were officially sealed. Students weren't told why, only that safety concerns had arisen. Jenna watched the student crowd from the hallway. One kid, tall, athletic build, about 17, stood too calmly. His eyes tracked the cops with something too measured. When they locked eyes, he gave her a small, knowing nod. She stepped toward him. He vanished into the crowd. She followed. Through the science wing, past the art room, into the stairwell. She heard a door close, then a gunshot. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Jenna hit the stairwell door hard and fast. The sound of the gunshot was still ringing in her ears. The hallway echoed as her boots slammed the concrete steps. She drew her sidearm, sweeping the corners, listening for anything, footsteps, breathing, another shot. Nothing, silence, she radioed in. Shots fired north stairwell. Suspect on the move, maybe armed. Request backup immediately. Her voice was steady, but her chest tightened with every second. She'd been on dozens of cases, but this one felt different. Every move felt like it was being watched, controlled. She pushed down the next set of stairs and burst into the basement hallway. Dim lights flickered above. She saw the door at the end swinging slightly. He'd gone that way. She ran. The hallway smelled like bleach and damp air. It was narrow, filled with storage lockers and old sports gear. She reached the door, kicked it open, gun raised. Empty, just a dark boiler room. Pipes hissed from the walls. Shadows danced against rusted tanks. A cat scurried out from behind a crate, making her flinch. "Damn it," she muttered. Her backup arrived seconds later, Officer Bryce and 2 others. "Perimeter's clear. No one saw him exit the building," Bryce said, scanning the room. "You sure someone came down here? I heard the shot, and I saw him. A student, tall, athletic. He ran. They swept the room. Nothing but dust and old equipment. No weapon. No suspect. Just a sense of being one step behind." Later that afternoon, Jenna pulled up the student files. She went through every male athlete at the school. She knew the face, she just needed a name. There, Caleb Morris, 17, varsity football, clean record. She printed his photo, that was him. No doubt. She headed straight to Principal Hammond's office. "Where's Caleb Morris?" she asked the principal, not bothering with pleasantries. The principal frowned. "Caleb? Why? He may be connected to both locker room deaths. I need to speak to him now." Hammond looked stunned. "He's been out all week. Family emergency. He's not on campus." Jenna froze. "What kind of emergency?" "I'm not sure. His mother called Monday morning. Said they had to travel. I didn't ask questions." Jenna narrowed her eyes. "Give me the address on file." That night, Jenna and Bryce drove to the Morris residence, a quiet house in a suburban neighborhood 10 miles outside town. The lights were off. No cars in the driveway. Jenna knocked. No answer. She tried again, harder this time. Still nothing. Bryce pointed toward the side. "Let's check around back." They moved quietly. The yard was overgrown. A shed leaned to one side like it could collapse at any moment. Jenna stepped onto the back porch and tried the door. Unlocked. She stepped in first. The house was cold and smelled like stale air. No signs of movement, dust on the floor. They cleared the rooms one by one. Living room, kitchen, 2 bedrooms. Empty. Then Jenna opened the 3rd door. It led to the basement. Another chill passed through her. "I'll go first," Bryce offered. She nodded, and they moved slowly, one step at a time. The basement light buzzed overhead. The room was cluttered with boxes and old furniture. And then they saw it, a photo board. Pinned across it were printed pictures, crime scene photos from 2004 and the recent death. Pictures that hadn't been released publicly. Pictures only someone inside the investigation would have had. "What the hell?" Bryce whispered. Jenna stepped closer. There were also school schedules, locker assignments, and something else, maps. Marked blueprints of the school's ventilation system. And at the center of the board, a torn piece of paper. One line scribbled in red ink. "He's still in here." Jenna's heart pounded. This wasn't just obsession. This was planning. She noticed a stack of printed emails on the nearby table. Some were from the school district. Others were from someone inside the police department. "How does student get this?" Bryce asked. She looked at the headers. They weren't addressed to Caleb. They were addressed to someone named Greg Morris. Bryce turned pale. Greg Morris? That's Caleb's father, former military. Used to work school security before he got fired. Fired, Jen asked. Gun incident, covered up fast? I only heard rumors. She picked up a folder marked Riley. Inside were clippings about her dad. Photos of him, notes from the original case. Times, dates, suspects. They weren't just tracking the students. They'd been watching her family. Jenna sat in her car that night, parked outside the Morris house, trying to make sense of it. Caleb wasn't working alone. He couldn't be. The level of detail, the surveillance, the insider access, this was deeper. She pulled up her dad's number and dialed. He answered instantly. "Talk to me." I found a wall of evidence, Caleb's house. Photos from the case, internal emails, building blueprints. He's not some kid trying to scare people. This is organized, military-level planning. Riley exhaled on the other end. That doesn't surprise me. What aren't you telling me, Dad? He paused. Back in 2004, we got a tip. Anonymous. Said a student died because she saw something she wasn't supposed to. Something involving someone on staff. A man who was never supposed to be there. Jenna's grip tightened. You think it was Greg Morris? I don't know, but someone shut it down hard. And now 2 girls are dead, same school, same way. We need to find Caleb now. They put out an APB on Caleb Morris. A citywide manhunt started at 6 a.m., and by 9:13, a call came in. Shots fired at Willow Creek High. Male suspect on scene, possible hostage. Jenna hit the gas, lights flashing. Sirens wailing. She sped through traffic, her mind racing faster than the engine. She'd started this trying to solve a cold case. Now it was red hot and burning everything in its path. The school parking lot was chaos. Marked units skidded into position. Officers in tactical gear took cover behind their doors. Students were being evacuated in lines, some crying, some shaking, some not understanding what was happening. Teachers shouted orders, trying to maintain calm. Jenna parked her cruiser at the edge of the campus and sprinted toward the east wing entrance. Bryce caught up with her, breathless. He's inside, he said, eyes locked on the building. Witness says he's wearing a black hoodie, gray jeans. He was seen dragging a girl into the locker hallway. We think it's Hannah Spencer. Cheerleader? Jenna asked. Yeah, senior. Same locker area as the last victim. Jenna didn't respond. She knew what that meant. Caleb was repeating the same setup, same room, same type of victim. But this time he was being sloppy. This time they had him. Seal all exits, she ordered into her radio. Nobody gets in or out. She reached the building and carefully opened the side door, gun raised, eyes sharp. It was quiet inside, too quiet. Footsteps echoed in the distance, somewhere down the tiled hallway. A backpack lay abandoned in the middle of the floor. There was a smear of red near the gym doors. Blood, Bryce pointed, that way. They moved fast, passing the weight room and 2 empty classrooms. Jenna's flashlight beam cut through the dark like a blade. The locker room was just ahead. She stopped outside the double doors. Wait, she said, voice low, listen. There was a sound, soft breathing, and something else, the click of metal. Handcuffs. She pushed the door open slowly. The room was lit only by the emergency lights overhead, casting a cold blue hue across the lockers. The air was thick. She could smell sweat, cleaning fluid. Fear, a girl was kneeling in the center of the room. Hands behind her back, duct tape across her mouth. Hannah, eyes wide, terrified. Jenna ran forward. I got you, she whispered, pulling the tape off and cutting the zip ties around her wrists. He's here, Hannah sobbed. He's still in here. Where? Jenna whispered. Hannah looked toward the far end of the locker row. Jenna spun around, her gun raised again. Bryce circled behind her, covering the opposite side. Footsteps again, this time running. Then a crash. Locker, Bryce shouted. The metal rattled violently. Jenna turned and fired a warning shot into the air. Freeze, but Caleb didn't stop. He charged from behind the lockers with something in his hand. It gleamed under the light. A knife. Bryce reacted instantly, firing twice. One hit the locker behind Caleb. The other struck his shoulder, spinning him sideways. But Caleb didn't go down. He crashed into Bryce, slamming him to the ground. The knife scraped across Bryce's vest, sparks flying. Jenna moved fast. She kicked Caleb square in the ribs, knocking him off. He rolled, groaning, gripping his shoulder. "Don't move," she barked. He didn't. His knife slid across the floor. Jenna kicked it away, then cuffed him while he cursed and screamed, kicking wildly. "You have no idea what you're doing," he spat, blood pooling at the corner of his mouth. "You're all part of it." Back at the station, Caleb was silent for hours. Then he asked for Jenna, alone. She entered the room cautiously, the camera on the wall blinking red, recording everything. Caleb stared at her, his arm in a sling, his hair damp with sweat. "You've read the files," he said flatly, "so you know." "I know your father used to work at the school," Jenna replied, voice calm. "And I know he was fired under suspicious circumstances. But you kidnapped a girl. 2 girls are dead. And you planned it, all of it." He leaned forward. "I didn't kill them," Jenna stared. "They were already dead," he said. "I just finished the message." "What message?" Caleb looked her dead in the eye. "Same hallway. Same camera blind spot. You know the school's layout. You know nobody ever saw who came or went. But they still died, right?" She said nothing. "Because someone knew exactly how to hide," Caleb said. "Someone trained. Someone who's been doing this for longer than I've been alive." He leaned closer. "And you're looking in the wrong direction." Hours later, Jenna sat in her office, sifting through everything they'd found at the Morris house again. The email printouts, the maps, the red ink note, "He's still in here." She opened her laptop and pulled up old case files. Riley's old partner, the school security rosters, staff from 2004, contractors. She was looking for a link, something everyone missed. Then she saw it, a janitor named E. West, employed from 2001, 2004, fired the week after the first death. No reason listed. She tried to search his name in the department's database, but there was nothing. No address, no phone, not even a photo. "Who the hell are you?" she whispered to herself. She picked up the phone. "Dad," she said, "did you ever hear of a guy named E. West?" There was a long pause. Then Riley's voice came back, low and slow. "Yeah," he said, "I've heard that name. You never mentioned him before." "I couldn't," he said. "That name, it disappeared from the reports before they were filed. Someone made sure of it." Jenna's hands curled into fists. Her eyes scanned the board in front of her, photos, victims, blueprints. And one thing repeated in every single case. The camera blind spots, the ones no one thought mattered. But what if someone had mapped them first? By midnight, she was back at the school, alone. Armed, she walked the hallways slowly, checking every angle, every door, every camera. She stood in the same locker room again, looking at the ceiling. A vent barely visible, small but enough. She climbed onto the bench, then the lockers, and pulled the cover off. The space inside was dusty, but there were fingerprints. Recent, then something fell out. A piece of paper, handwritten, one sentence. "He's still in here." Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Jenna stood on top of the locker, holding the small slip of paper in her gloved hand. Her breathing was steady, but her mind raced. Same word, same message. Again. "He's still in here." She climbed down slowly and scanned the locker room with new eyes. Every creak, every flickering light, every hidden vent. This place wasn't just a locker room. It was a hunting ground, and someone had been using it for years. And whoever he was, he had never really left. Not the school, not the system. He was careful. He moved through hidden paths. He studied the schedules. He picked his victims and vanished without a trace. And now Jenna realized he wasn't just some ghost figure. He was someone smart, real live, and probably watching. Back at the station, she stayed up all night. She traced every employee from 2000 to 2005. Anyone with access to restricted areas. Maintenance workers, security, substitute teachers, even delivery drivers. And then she found it, Eric West. Hired in 2001 as part of a private maintenance firm contracted to work with school facilities. Not officially on the district payroll. No employment termination paperwork. No photo in his personnel file. She checked again. A police background check had been submitted in 2001, but not approved. Flagged. The report showed that Eric West had changed his legal name in 1997. No details as to why. The man had slipped through the cracks. She leaned back in her chair. "West isn't a ghost," she said under her breath. "He's just good at hiding." Later that day, she met with her father at an off-grid diner just outside town. Riley looked tired, older than she remembered. He hadn't slept either. "You were right," Jenna said. "There's a name that kept getting buried." "Eric West." Riley stirred his coffee. "Yeah, I remember him now. Real quiet guy. Worked odd hours, always wore gloves. Hardly spoke to anyone. You investigated him?" "I tried," Riley said, voice low. "He vanished the day after Samantha Quinn's death. Just disappeared. I filed a report, but it got pulled. Chief told me to stop asking." "Who pulled it?" He looked up. "The school board." Jenna shook her head. "Then it's bigger than just West." Riley leaned closer. "I think he's still here, Jenna. Somewhere watching." Jenna nodded. "I don't just think it. I know it." The next morning, Jenna got a tip from one of the newer patrol officers. He'd been canvassing the old neighborhoods where former staff had lived. He found an abandoned house 5 blocks from the school. The property was condemned, boarded windows, broken gate, but inside it wasn't empty. Someone had been living there, recently. Jenna and Bryce entered the house just before sunrise. The front door creaked like something out of a horror film, but this wasn't fiction. It was worse, it was real. The air inside smelled like mildew and engine oil. They cleared the first floor quickly, empty. Then they went down the hallway. A padlocked door at the back. Jenna looked at Bryce. "Crowbar?" He handed it over. One loud crack and the door flew open. A basement staircase led downward. Jenna drew her weapon. They descended one step at a time. The basement was more than a hiding place. It was a war room. A single hanging bulb lit the space, casting long shadows on the wall. Maps of the school were pinned across every corner. Photos, students, faculty, police officers with red strings connecting them. A timeline, victims, patterns. And in the corner, a black duffel bag. She unzipped it. Inside were loaded magazines, a disassembled Glock, zip ties, duct tape, latex gloves. Next to the bag sat a burner phone and a spiral notebook. She opened the notebook and flipped through. Each page was a record, surveillance notes, patterns, lunch schedules, locker combinations, camera angles. Even her name was in there. Jenna Riley, investigator, watches the locker room camera footage late, likely to dig too deep. Her stomach turned. Bryce turned white. He's been planning something. Jenna looked at the last page. One note, May 17th. She'll be alone. Today was May 17th. They raced back to the school. Jenna radioed every available unit. Lock down Willow Creek High. Eric West is active. He's watching the locker room. He's probably already inside. Her phone buzzed. A call from the front office. A receptionist's voice came through, shaky. "We saw someone near the gym hallway, a man in a janitor uniform. But no one's scheduled to clean today." "Get everyone out of that building," Jenna snapped. The school emptied fast. Students flooded the lot. Teachers tried to control the panic, but word had spread. Another manhunt, another killer. And this time, nobody knew what he looked like. Jenna entered through the north hall. Quiet, empty. All lights were off. She passed the vending machines, the trophy cases, the staircase where the first shot was fired days ago. She reached the locker hallway, alone, gun raised. Step by step, she moved past the doors. No sound, no movement. Then she heard it. A slow, steady footstep. Someone was inside. She pushed open the door, her gun aimed at the middle of the room. "Police, drop anything in your hands." Silence, then a voice, calm, grown. Familiar. "You're not supposed to be here yet." She turned. A man stood at the back of the locker row, tall, bald, maintenance uniform, gloves on. No ID badge. "I've waited a long time to finish this," he said. "Eric West?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "They told me to clean up a mess. I just never stopped." She stepped forward. "Where's the weapon?" He didn't answer. Then he lunged behind a locker door. Gun. Fast. Jenna dove to the side, firing twice. The bullets clipped the door frame as West dropped into a crouch and fired back. The shot grazed her shoulder. She bit down a scream and slid behind a locker. She could hear him moving. Quiet. Controlled. Calculated. She peeked out and fired again, hitting the metal beside him. Then Bryce kicked the door open behind them and shouted, "Freeze!" West turned his weapon and fired. Bryce dropped behind a bench, returning fire. 2 bullets ripped through the lockers. One slammed into the wall behind Jenna. She popped out again. This time her shot hit his leg. West fell sideways, groaning, but still trying to crawl behind the bench. She rushed forward, gun drawn. "Don't move. Hands out where I can see them." He hesitated. Then his hand moved again, slowly reaching for something tucked in his belt. She fired once. He collapsed. Sirens wailed again as backup filled the room. Jenna stood over West's unconscious body. Her shoulder throbbed. Her heart still pounded. Bryce helped her sit on the bench. "You good?" he asked. She nodded slowly, eyes fixed on West. "He's still in here," she whispered. And this time, she finally understood exactly what that meant. The hospital room smelled like disinfectant and overcooked food. Jenna sat upright in bed, a thick white bandage strapped across her left shoulder. The bullet had gone clean through. No damage to bone, but it hurt like hell. Her phone buzzed on the table beside her for the 6th time in an hour. Bryce had been texting updates since dawn. She finally reached for it, scrolling past the usual check-ins. Then she saw it. West's awake. They're moving him to Blackwood Holding Facility. She stood up, pain shooting through her arm, but she didn't care. She grabbed her coat, signed her discharge papers, and left without saying a word to the nurse. Blackwood was a high-security facility 40 minutes outside the city. It was surrounded by 2 fences and a dozen armed guards. Most inmates were high risk or connected to closed federal cases. Jenna had only been there once years ago for a different investigation. Now she was back, and this time it was personal. A steel door buzzed open as she entered the visitor's wing. A guard led her down the hallway, past rows of reinforced glass windows. At the end sat West, hands cuffed, legs chained, bandage around his thigh where she'd shot him. He didn't look up at first. Then he smirked. "You still look like your father," he said calmly. Jenna didn't sit. "Why did you do it?" she asked. He gave a slow, lazy shrug. "Because people are sloppy. They think routine means safety. Schools are full of patterns, timetables, weaknesses. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters." Jenna stepped closer, her voice dropped. "What about Samantha Quinn? What did she see?" West's smirk faded. "She wasn't supposed to be there that morning," he said. "I came in through the vents, just to watch. Learn routines. She surprised me. She saw me coming out of the ceiling. We stared at each other for maybe 10 seconds. And then she turned and ran." "So you killed her?" She panicked. Slammed her head against the bench. "I didn't touch her." Jenna's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't care what you believe. All I know is she saw me and I couldn't let that go. So I covered my tracks. I deleted the camera footage, wiped prints, took the backup drives. She still had time to grab her phone. That's when she typed it." Jenna remembered the message on the screen. "He's still in here. Who else helped you?" He looked away. "Who else, West?" He turned back slowly. "You're asking the wrong questions." Back at the station, Jenna paced her office, staring at the crime board. Photos of the victims, timeline, locker room blueprints, Eric West's photo now pinned at the center. But something still didn't sit right. West was good, extremely good, but not enough to stay invisible for 20 years without help. He had to have someone on the inside. Someone who kept feeding him schedules, locker assignments, camera locations. And he'd said it himself. "You're asking the wrong questions." She called Bryce. "Pull the employment records again. I want every staff member from 2004 who's still working at the school, especially anyone who transferred between departments or went off the radar." An hour later, he called back. "I found something," he said. "Kinda weird. Go on. There's a guy named David Conrad. Used to be school counselor back in 2004. Took a leave of absence the same week Samantha died. Came back 2 years later. But now he's not listed under school staff. He's listed as district maintenance." Jenna frowned. A counselor switched to maintenance? Exactly no HR file after 2006. But he's still receiving district paychecks. Where's he working now? Last known assignment? Willow Creek High. Jenna and Bryce returned to the school before sunset. Most of the students had gone home. Only a few faculty cars remained in the lot. They headed straight to the basement, the same area they'd found the surveillance board. They didn't need a warrant. They had enough suspicion. Inside the basement, they found rows of unused lockers and old school supplies. In the corner, a door was slightly cracked open. Bryce pulled his weapon. Jenna nodded, her hand gripping her gun too. They stepped inside. It wasn't a supply room. It was a surveillance room. 6 monitors buzzed with real-time footage, gym, library, classrooms, stairwells, even the girls' locker room. On the table were printed photos, old ones, new ones, and one in particular made Jenna stop breathing. A photo of her from last week, standing in the locker room, looking up at the ceiling vent. Bryce turned around. "We've been watched this whole time." She reached for the drawer under the desk. Inside, 3 handguns, a list of class schedules, flash drives labeled by year, more maps. "Where's Conrad?" she said. A noise echoed above them. Someone running. Jenna and Bryce tore through the stairwell, up the hallway toward the staff lounge. They burst through the doors. David Conrad stood there, gray shirt, clipboard in hand, looking surprised. "Detectives?" he asked. "What's this about?" Jenna didn't waste time. "Hands where I can see them." He frowned, confused. "Now." He raised his hands slowly. Bryce moved behind him, cuffed him without resistance. "You're under investigation for conspiracy, illegal surveillance, and obstruction of justice," Jenna said. "That's insane," Conrad said, calm. "I've worked for the district for 20 years. "Exactly," Jenna replied, "and somehow you always manage to stay out of sight." They brought him in for questioning. That night, under interrogation, Conrad broke. He didn't admit to the murders, but he did admit to helping West. "I didn't know he killed anyone at first," he said. "He told me he was just observing, studying safety gaps. After Samantha, he said he panicked. Said it would ruin everything if people found out he'd been there." "Why'd you help him stay hidden?" Jenna asked. Conrad looked down. "Because they told me to." "Who's they?" Silence. He didn't answer. Just stared at the table. At 3 a.m., Jenna sat alone in the evidence room. She plugged one of the flash drives into her laptop. Surveillance clip. Dozens of them, some from years ago, some from just last week. And then she saw one marked 2004 Quinn sequence final. She clicked play. The footage began. Samantha Quinn walked into the locker room. She stopped, looked up, took a step back. Then she turned, started to run. And behind her, a shape, a man dropping from the ceiling. Wearing a janitor's uniform, face partially visible, but it wasn't West. It was someone else, someone younger. Jenna leaned in. It was Conrad. Jenna froze. The screen glowed in the dark evidence room, casting her face in cold blue light. The video played in slow motion now. Not a shadow, not a trick of light. The man dropping from the ceiling vent behind Samantha Quinn was David Conrad. Not West, not someone helping from a distance. Conrad was the one inside that locker room in 2004. She clicked pause, her heart thudding. It all made sense now. West wasn't the predator. He was the lookout, the handler, the decoy. Conrad had been the one hiding in plain sight all these years. She rushed to the interrogation room where Conrad sat quietly, arms crossed, eyes steady. Bryce was there too, watching from the corner. Jenna stepped in and dropped a printed screenshot from the video onto the table. Conrad looked down, his face twitched. "I watched the whole video," she said. "You were in that vent. You dropped down behind Samantha. You weren't helping West. You were leading." He didn't say anything. She slammed her hand on the table. "You were in that room when she died. Your face is on the tape. You killed her." Still silence. Jenna leaned in closer. "And you killed the others, didn't you?" He looked up slowly. "I didn't kill them," he said. "They found me." "What does that mean?" "They found what I was doing. They weren't supposed to. None of them were targets at first. They walked in at the wrong time." "Wrong time?" Jenna asked. "You mean when you were watching them change? Stalking them through the ceiling vents?" His jaw tightened. "I built the access paths," he said, his voice steady now. "When I was still the school counselor, I noticed patterns. The blind spots in security, the gaps in supervision. Nobody watched the girls' locker room too closely. Everyone just assumed it was safe." He smiled faintly. "It wasn't." Later that morning, Conrad was charged with multiple counts. illegal surveillance, obstruction of justice, and suspected involvement in 2 homicides. He hadn't confessed to the killings directly, but his face on the original Quinn video was enough to reopen every file tied to the case. West was transferred to a different holding unit. His silence returned, but not before he said one more thing to Jenna during transport. "You're not finished," he whispered. "There's still one left." She tried to question him further, but he clammed up again, just repeated the phrase twice more. "There's still one left." Back at the station, Jenna pulled up every known piece of evidence they had. One name stuck out from the original 2004 investigation. A man named Robert Kelman. He was listed as the school's head of security the year Samantha died, but strangely there were no interview records, no testimony, no signed reports. He'd vanished from the files after the first week. No resignation notice, no transfer. Just gone. She ran a search on his name through the police database. No results. She widened the search. DMV records. Faute de registration. One hit, a vehicle registration in a nearby town under a new name, Richard Kemp. Same birth date, same face, just older. 2 hours later, Jenna and Bryce were in a black SUV headed to a dusty trailer park outside Ridgeway. They rolled past rusted-out trucks, broken satellite dishes, and clotheslines flapping in the wind. Lot 27, a small gray trailer with dark curtains. Jenna knocked hard, no answer. She knocked again, still nothing. She looked at Bryce, then stepped around back. The window was cracked. She peered inside. The living room was dark, but something flickered on the far wall. A small TV. Then she noticed it, the same school hallway camera footage playing on loop. The gym, the science wing, the locker room. Someone was watching Willow Creek from inside this trailer. Bryce kicked the door open. They moved fast. No one in the living room. Kitchen empty. Then a noise from the back. A drawer slamming. Jenna shouted, "Police, step out now." No response. They crept toward the bedroom. Jenna flung the door open. A man lunged from behind the dresser. She dodged to the side as he swung a metal pipe. It missed her by inches. Bryce tackled him from behind. They wrestled to the floor, crashing into the bed frame. The man grunted, strong for his age, but Bryce locked him down fast. Jenna moved in, gun drawn, panting. It was Robert Kelman, or Richard Kemp, whatever he called himself now. Gray hair, scar across his cheek, eyes sharp. "You've been watching the school," Jenna said, pointing to the monitors in the other room. "You never stopped, did you?" "I had to keep the others in line," he muttered. They were getting sloppy, first West, then Conrad. "Others?" Jenna asked. "How many of you were there?" He didn't answer, but his eyes said enough. There was a ring, a network. People like West and Conrad weren't lone actors. They were part of something bigger. Back at the station, Jenna questioned Kelman for 6 hours. He never gave names, but he gave one location. "There's a safe," he said, "in the old boiler room under the school. I kept it there in case I ever needed leverage." "What's inside?" "Everything. The original footage, records. The girls who knew, what they saw, it's all there." She called in a crew. That night, Jenna and Bryce returned to Willow Creek High one last time. The school was silent. The students were gone for the weekend. They entered through the rear loading dock, descended into the boiler room, the same place where West's basement maps had pointed them before. Behind a rusted cabinet, they found a loose brick wall. Bryce pried it open, a hidden compartment. Inside was a small fireproof safe. They brought it back to the station and cracked it open. Folders, flash drives, hard copies of interviews that never made it to the case files, photos, names. Jenna sat down at the table and began sorting, and then she saw it, a folder labeled Next Target. She opened it. Inside were surveillance shots of a student currently enrolled. Cheerleader, same uniform, locker assignment marked. The date on the top corner, tomorrow. Before we continue, let us know in the comments where you are watching from today and what time you are currently watching this video. If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Jenna didn't sleep. The photo in the folder showed a girl, brown ponytail, red and white uniform, walking down the same hallway where Samantha Quinn had died 20 years ago. Her name was Lila Ramos, age 17, senior cheerleader, same physical profile as the previous victims. The page marked her class schedule, locker number, even the route she usually took to the showers after practice, and the date printed at the top, tomorrow. Not a theory, not a plan, a scheduled kill. At 4:32 a.m., Jenna called Principal Hammond. "Cancel school," she said flatly. "Lock every door. I want the building empty except for officers. No staff, no students." Hammond resisted at first. "Jenna, this is highly unusual. We do it," she snapped. "If we don't stop this, someone dies tomorrow morning. Maybe more than one." By sunrise, Willow Creek High was on full lockdown. Bryce arrived at 6:15, armored vest strapped on, rifle in hand. Team Alphas covering north and west entrances. Team Bravo's setting up by the gym. "You and I take the inside," Jenna nodded. They entered through the side hallway and headed straight for the girls' locker room. It looked the same as always, polished floor, blue-tinted lights, cold air hanging thick in the space. But something was different this time. They weren't investigating a crime. They were preventing one. By 7:08 a.m., they were in position. Jenna crouched behind the lockers. Bryce was tucked near the doorway. Two officers monitored camera feeds from the van outside. Another was stationed near the stairwell. They waited and waited. Every creak made Jenna's skin crawl. At 7:43, a sound came from the ceiling vent. Not loud, just a dull metallic tap. Jenna looked up. A single screw from the vent panel above had come loose and dropped to the floor. She raised her weapon. Then, movement. The panel above began to slide slowly, carefully, like someone had done it dozens of times before. And then a hand slipped out, wearing gloves. Holding a small camera, Jenna moved fast. "Drop it, police!" The camera jerked upward. The hand vanished. She bolted to the locker bench, climbed up, and pulled herself toward the ceiling hatch. Bryce tossed her a flashlight. She opened the vent and aimed the light inside. Dust swirled. Then the beam landed on a man crawling away fast, trying to disappear into the ventilation maze. "Stop," she shouted. "Come out now, no answer." She pulled herself in and began crawling forward, elbows burning against the metal. It was narrow and hot. Her shoulder screamed with pain, but she kept going. The man turned to glance back, short beard, gray hoodie, small camera pack strapped to his back. Not West, not Conrad, someone new. She reached for his leg. He kicked. Hard, the flashlight slipped. The beam spun wildly. She grabbed again, this time catching the strap of his camera bag. He pulled forward, the strap tore free. He kept crawling, but now she had his camera. She dropped back out of the vent and tossed it to Bryce. "Run that footage now." The man escaped into the West Wing ventilation, crawling above classrooms and empty hallways. Every time Jenna tried to get ahead, he changed direction. Then she heard it, a loud clang from the science lab ceiling. He was dropping down again. They raced toward it. When they burst into the room, he was halfway out of the vent, legs dangling. Bryce raised his rifle. "Don't move," the man froze. "Hands behind your head," he obeyed. Jenna climbed onto the lab table, grabbed his belt, and yanked him down to the floor. He hit hard, groaned, and stayed down. They cuffed him. She turned him over and looked at his face. Younger than West, early 30s. "Who are you?" she demanded. He didn't answer. They took him in. At the station, fingerprint records confirmed his identity. Matthew Rains, former student at Willow Creek. Expelled in 2003 after a fight in the locker room. Had multiple juvenile records. No current employment. Lived under various names. No fixed address. He'd been hiding inside the school system for years, bouncing from night jobs, maintenance gigs, using old access codes. Inside his bag were maps, tools, and audio recordings of the locker room from the last 2 weeks. He'd been monitoring cheerleaders again, including Lila Ramos. The unsent text from Samantha Quinn, "He's still in here," wasn't about one man. It was about all of them, a chain of predators. And Matthew Rains had picked up where West and Conrad left off. At the final press briefing, Jenna stood in front of cameras and told the truth. That a network of men had used access to school buildings to carry out a string of crimes for decades. That they moved through vents, camera blind spots, and institutional failure. That Samantha Quinn had tried to warn them in 2004, and no one listened until now. 2 weeks later, Jenna visited Lila Ramos and her mother at home. Lila had no idea how close she'd come to being another headline. Jenna handed her the recovered note from the locker room vent. Lila read it out loud. He's still in here. She looked up. What does that mean? Jenna took a breath. It means you were never the only one he was watching. If you liked this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for the part 2 of this story. Also to strengthen our community, let us know in the comments where you are watching from and what time you are currently watching this video.